Jesus isn't looking for a better you. Jesus is looking for a completely different you. And from what we know about Nicodemus, it does appear that Nicodemus really was a good guy, which is interesting because Nicodemus was a Pharisee. And all throughout the New Testament, the Pharisees are not really seen in the most positive light. Instead, the Pharisees are known as this judgmental, this legalistic, this unloving group of people, this group of people who were constantly changing the goalposts of what was to be expected and just compounding more and more guilt onto the people who looked to them for teaching. But we see something different in Nicodemus, and it's not just here in John chapter 3 that we see this, but it's also in how Nicodemus responded after the crucifixion of Jesus. So yes, it does look like that Nicodemus was a good guy, but the goal is not to simply be a good guy. The goal is not to just simply be a good girl. The goal is to be made new. And the reason I believe that this is so important is because I think that there's a part of us, and I throw myself in the middle of this us, that views the expression of our relationship with Jesus by just simply trying to be morally good, which is good. As we talked about last night, as Jesus followers, we have been called to be set apart. We have been called to be a light in the darkness, but although it's good, it's still not enough. But we try to modify our behavior. We try to live morally good enough to somehow earn God's favor. We work so hard to say all the right things, to do all the right things, to act in a certain way, and for periods of time, we might be able to keep this up. We might be able to do it well, but if our hearts aren't being changed, if our hearts aren't being made new, then we're fighting a losing battle. Eventually, the day will come, and I'm sure every single one of us in this room have experienced this at some point. The day will come whenever we will let down our guard just a little bit, right? And all of a sudden, we will say something or we will do something, and it will seem so out of character for us. But the truth is that it's not really out of character for us. It's just that our words and our actions kind of made its way through the behavior modification filters that we placed around our hearts. Maybe you've said this, you say something, you do something, and then these words come out of your mouth or they come into your mind. I don't know where that came from. Well, I do. It came from the fact that we have jacked up hearts. And it just so happens that our filters didn't catch our words or our actions this time. But this is why behavior modification, it is not the answer for Jesus followers. Instead, and this is our Theology 101 word for the day, the answer is regeneration. Regeneration. And regeneration is the supernatural work of the Holy Spirit that grants spiritual life to dead sinners. Regeneration, it replaces the heart of stone with a heart of flesh. And Jesus, he uses this confusing little metaphor. What in the world does he mean? He uses this metaphor of being born again to describe regeneration. He uses a human experience to describe a spiritual reality. Last night, I showed you all a picture of my family. And I remember last year in the hospital when my little boy Graham was born. And after he was born, the doctors and the nurses, they came into the room, and not a single one of them walked up to Graham and shook his little hand and said, Graham, you did it, buddy. Way to go, we're so proud of you. But instead, every single one of them walked up to my wife and congratulated my wife for what it is that she had just done. And much in the same way that an infant receives no credit for being born, we receive no glory for being regenerated by God. But many of us, we have truly tried to just modify our behavior without the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit. And if we can be honest for just a second, there is little in this life that is more exhausting than just trying to be good enough on our own power. Constantly just trying to make yourself look like you're something that you're not, trying to make yourself look like you're more spiritual than you are. Day after day after day, you put on this front. And I don't think we do this because of bad intentions. I don't think it comes from a bad place. Instead, I think that it comes from a really, really good place, but still the results of this action and the results of this mindset can be so, so devastating. Because the guilt that you feel whenever you mess up, whenever you're trying to do it all on your own, it is completely overwhelming. And the cruddy thing about guilt is this, is that guilt almost always leads to shame. And shame will always lead to a foothold for the evil one. But still, day after day after day, we grit our teeth and we say, I'm going to be good today. I'm going to do it today. We spend so much energy trying to do something that we are completely incapable of doing on our own. Or better yet, we spend so much energy trying to do something that we were never intended to do on our own. I want you to hear this today. You cannot fix your own brokenness. You cannot heal your own broken heart. You can try and try and try to just be a better you, but in the end, you will find yourself frustrated with a heart that is hardening with every day. Why? Because the goal is not to simply be a better you. The goal is to be a completely different, a completely new you. The goal is not behavior modification. The goal is regeneration. The goal is that the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit will be so prevalent in your life that the Holy Spirit will literally transform every part of you and me. That the way that you think and the way that you talk and the way that you act will all be transformed by the Holy Spirit. The way that you live, the way that you respond to criticism, the way you respond to praise will be transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit. The way that you are a student, the kind of teammate that you are, the kind of employee that you are, the kind of friend that you are, the kind of sibling that you are, the kind of child that you are, will all be transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit. But none of this is because of you. But all of it is because of what Jesus has done for you and what Jesus is doing in you. So here's the best news that I have for you today. This regenerating, transforming power of the Holy Spirit in your life, this is exactly what Jesus wants for you. It is exactly what Jesus wants for all of you.